Hello, people. Welcome back to another episode of the Navvai Shift. I'm joined with my co-host Darnell, and we have a very special guest. His name is Kevin Brown. He is the PR and Communications Manager over at Scottish Friendly. So, Kevin, how are you?
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. And for Kevin, for those that are not too familiar with who you are, could you give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, no problem at all. So I've been in the industry, financial services, my whole career. So I started out at a company called, at the time, Scottish Equitable, which was subsequently bought over by a Dutch company called Aegon. They still firmly remain within the pensions and investment space in the UK. I was there for about 9-10 years before moving over to Lloyds Banking Group and primarily working across the Scottish Widows Pension and investments brand there, leading their external communications. And now I'm at Scottish Friendly, a lovely mutual organisation.
Amazing. Well, thank you for telling us about your role at Scottish Friendly. I wanted to ask, how does your work connect with the mission to help families build financial resilience?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we don't have shareholders through our mutual status. Everything we do is for our members. So our customers are what we call our members. So once they start investing in a Scottish Friendly product, they are a member of ours. Just go back to the point that we don't have shareholders. Instead of shareholders, we have what we call a delegate system. So we have up to 30 delegates who represent the UK. So we have delegates across all parts of the UK. If you were to look at our customer, where our customers are from, yes, we're a Scottish organisation. We're based in Glasgow. Our head office is Glasgow. We've only got one office. But if you were to look at the makeup of the customers within Scottish Friendly, we'd say about 50% are in Scotland. The other 50% would be other parts of the UK, and that's primarily due to the makeup of the UK economy. So in terms of UK households, yeah, it's fundamental. It's absolutely key. We'll probably talk on it in a bit more detail, but there are, as we know, a lot of economic pressures out there, geopolitical pressures, so a lot of politics. Politics that are not solely in the UK, just the point we only sell in the UK, but we are affected by events that happen across other parts of the world. So the war in Ukraine affects us, affects everybody, affects every sector, not just financial services, of course. And then obviously what we've got ongoing discussions in America around tariffs, although I would caveat that to say that the UK is not as affected as other parts of the world, but there is a degree of that. But it's quite we've been through many economic cycles at Scottish Friendly. We've always overcome them. We've got a strategy that works, a strategy that was recently reviewed. And went to both executive and right up to the board level for review and subsequently approval that it still works despite all the issues and challenges that we still face in terms of UK households across the UK.
Nice. So, Kevin, you briefly touched on household savings. So I did want to ask, what has been some of the biggest changes you've actually seen in household saving behaviour over the last few years?
Few years, okay, that's good, great. Because I was going to touch on, we obviously went into, we're trying to move away from this, but lockdown did have, the pandemic did have an effect on all organisations, both with customers being nervous about being furloughed or losing their jobs altogether. Our colleagues struggled because of the increased demand on the call centre. Because there was so much uncertainty out there. I mean, you just had to look at the volatility in the stock market. So a lot of nervousness. We did see, though, that once things started to settle and offices started to open, there was what we called a spending splurge. So once the high street, so we had a period where we couldn't shop, we couldn't go abroad on holidays, obviously. It's hard to believe that there was one period where we were only allowed out of the house for 1 hour a day. I've got a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they think I'm just making this up when I reflect back on this actually was a thing. They were too young to remember it at the time. although they did live through it, but too young to know what was going on. And I remember the hourly walks down to the beach every day just to get out and about. Yes, it affected us, it affected everybody. All of a sudden, we shut the office unless you were a key worker. So by key worker, customer services, the department and the contact centre are classed as key workers because we still had a business to run. But it was difficult. It was really difficult. And one of the things that our chief executive at the time, Jim Galbraith, one of the things that he mentioned, I remember this as if it was yesterday on an all-colleague call, was, listen, this was to all of our colleagues, if you're struggling, reach out to your line manager, and if you have to take a half day, you have to take a few hours, that is absolutely fine. We don't know how difficult this is going to be. We don't know how long it's going to be until things get back to normality. I mean, things are still not normal. We're still seeing the kind of effects on how that all works. But yeah, it was difficult. But once things started open, there was a lot of unspent money. So we saw a spending splurge. We saw a spending splurge that we called out. That was the terminology we used at Scottish Friendly when we were speaking to the media, certainly. That when the high streets opened, people were allowed to start going on holidays again. People started investing more as well. So you talk about savings. Yes, savings has its place. We're an investment company, saying that we do have a cash fund within our adult ISA range of products. So we saw sales actually, we saw record-breaking sales, which was great. People were thinking about the long term, thinking about their families, and that was really nice to see. But then we went into the rising cost of living, which we're still seeing. Just now. So it's like it's just one thing after another, which has just been really, really difficult. We're still there, but there are signs of. Are there signs of improvement? Yes, there are. So yesterday we had inflation, which ticked up by almost a full percent. So we're currently back up to 3.5%, which is a percentage and a half above the Bank of England's target of 2%. But we can see light at the end of the tunnel. We know that in the summer months, for instance, there's been a lot of talk about energy caps being increased by Ofgem. Summer months, you're going to use less heating. We do believe interest rates obviously inflation has a knock-on effect on interest rates. Interest rates did drop by 25 bips in the recent when the Monetary Policy Committee met last, because of such a big increase in inflation yesterday, and an increase that many of the UK analysts and economists didn't expect it to be quite as big. That's obviously going to have a knock-on effect when the Monetary Policy Committee meet again next month, in terms of what is that vote out of the 9 members going to, where's it going to go? Likelihood is that interest rates will remain the same next month. Certainly won't drop. I would predict that they're not going to drop, and that's what's kind of out there in the market as well. Probably going to stay the same. In terms of moving, if we looked to the year end, we as Scottish Friendly will probably we're expecting a couple of rate drops between now and the end of the year. In terms of interest rates, in terms of inflation, we think the increase will be short-lived. We think it will peak at around about 3.6, 3.7% before it starts coming down closer to the Bank of England's target of 2%.
Nice. I wanted to touch on something that you said a few moments ago. It was in relation to you mentioned the spending splurge. During that period of time where you had an increase, where people saw that they wanted to start investing more, is that where did that just happen naturally, or did you put money aside for marketing to attract those people?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's something that doesn't just happen now with our marketing activity. Our marketing activity now is very, very tailored. We've got a really good strategy behind what we're doing within marketing to keep sales ticking up. When we were going through the kind of spending splurge, it was more natural. We didn't have an uptick in terms of the amount of spend we had in marketing. It was stabilised. Yeah. It was just, yes, we just saw a demand of people looking long term and looking long term in terms of investing, not just for themselves, but also for their children through children's savings accounts. We've got a junior ISA offering as well as an adult ISA offering.
Okay, nice. So I presume it was because of, given the circumstance of the uncertainty, it was more or less that people wanted to search for your type of company, and it would be like you would rank fairly high on the SEO. So that's when they were.
Yeah, we were one of the ones up there. It does help as well that we won one of the biggest children's savings awards in the UK, and we've won it for 6 years running now. So that's in best junior ISA provider, and that's through quite a prestigious awards publication through Money Facts. So 6 years in a trot, things like that help, and obviously that's front and centre of our website and things like that as well.
Yeah, Kevin, that's absolutely solid. So Scottish Friendly is most certainly grown significantly. It's probably fair to say. What do you think sets you apart from other savings providers?
The mutuality aspect sets us apart very much, and we're proud as a business. Our colleagues are proud of our mutual status. So profits that we make are invested back to our members. So those members who are invested in our main, what we'd call our main with profits fund, we invested 4.5 million back to them in 2024, and 23 million was distributed to eligible members in total last year. That's significant, and that equates to, the 4.5 million equates to around 8% of our profits were put back to our members through what we call, it's an initiative that we call profit share. Sharing our profits back to our members. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's like your members first type of company. You look after the people that come and use your services, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we are, especially, and I love you using this example, especially it began going through lockdown, and I would say one of the things I really loved speaking with our chair and our chief executive was that colleagues were number one. Colleague well-being was up there as number one. If we looked after our colleagues and done the right things for them in a very difficult period, then they were best placed or better placed to look after our members. And if those two, colleagues and customers, worked in harmony, then third priority was sales. Sales would take part of themselves. We've got enough capital that we didn't have to, if we didn't sell another product, we would still be around to pay claims to our customers for a number of years. So it was a really nice story, and it was something that really resonated strongly as a mutual organisation when I was speaking externally to the press, but obviously internally to colleagues as well. We've done a lot for colleagues, which was the right thing to do to get them through that difficult period until we started gradually opening the office. But we're very careful in terms of doing so. We didn't, day one have 200 colleagues back in the office. We were still doing all the self-distancing. We were still doing all the right things to help colleagues and to avoid colleagues obviously catching something that for many people could be quite severe.
Yeah. Kevin, you mentioned high inflation, interest rate uncertainty, flat wages. What impact are you seeing on people's ability to save right now?
So just last month, we announced, so we had our AGM, our annual general meeting, and we, despite such another difficult and challenging year with the economy and everything else happening in the world, it was our second highest sales in our history. And that was largely driven by our, what we call, own branded products, so Scottish Friendly branded products. And that's, what I mentioned earlier, that's our ISA and JISA range of products for investment and savings accounts. And it was £50 million that we made. If you looked at our own brand products, they were 30% up year on year. So a big uplift. Protection products, which is another part of our strategy, was a little bit less. But it shows that those two parts of our strategy, which I said earlier on, went through a review through the exec, through the board, and it was agreed that it was still the right thing. It means that if one area is doing particularly well and another area is maybe doing or having more challenges, then they can even themselves out, and it just shows that strategy continues to work. And then we've got a third part of the strategy, which has been quite exciting, which is mergers and acquisitions, and we can come to that if you want more information about that. So there's three parts. We call it a three-pronged growth strategy that Scottish Friendly has to serve our members.
Kevin, I did want to ask a question because I'm quite intrigued. So obviously, I think like what you said is that your main unique selling point is that, you know, you give back to your members. So would you say customers' expectation has like evolved from that? Like, are they kind of more demanding now, or are they just happy with the service that you're providing? Because, you know, with customers, I feel like they're always demanding more and more, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have some disgruntled customers, but I've came from large corporates where there's bigger issues out there. We don't see that. I mean, I can count on one hand how many customers have went to the media with an issue with Scottish Friendly in the 6.5 years that I've worked here. So yeah, I mean, yes, I think we've got about 800,000-900,000 members. We've got 1.3 million policies, so that means that there's some members that have multiple products. So they don't just have the one product, they maybe open others. So those customers are telling us they're happy with the service if they're opening more than one product with us.
Amazing.
That's a good take. Good question, Darnell.
Very good question.
Yeah. I wanted to sort of like delve into just a tad bit of politics, but just from the taxation to economic policy, how do you see Westminster shaping or, you know, limiting people's ability to save or invest?
One of the things I'd want to call out about the current government, so when Labour came into power, they said that they wanted to grow the mutual sector, so that's great. The Conservatives never went that far, but the Labour government have said that. There's obviously tax implications affect UK households' disposable income. There has been rumours that for higher net worths they might have even higher taxes, and we'll see what happens. There's a couple of speeches coming up. There's one at Mansion House in July, and then there's obviously the Chancellor's autumn budget in October. So it'll be interesting to see. There's obviously the April statement as well, when the Chancellor stood up and, you know, discussed the difficulties that we still face in the UK. We've obviously also got things like the national insurance hikes for employers as well. So that's difficult for a number of reasons, and that might, you talked about wages earlier on. Wages are kind of stabilising. We've been through a period of wages increasing quite significantly. That has a knock-on effect on inflationary pressures as well. Wages seem to be stabilising a bit, but yeah, with increased national insurance rates for employers, that's a difficult period in terms of giving employees those kind of wage increases that a lot of employees, a lot of companies have been used to, and also retaining good employees within the organisations as well. And that's a real key for us, is not just colleague retention, but also customer retention.
So Kevin, in an ideal world, what would the changes you would like to see from policymakers to support obviously the workplace and as well as for families to close like the UK savings gap?
What I've mentioned, so looking at my crystal ball, there's just so many challenges just now. It's a difficult one to predict, but the government are saying the right things in terms of I just touched on it. They want the mutual sector to grow. We went through a period, I mean, I think it started in the 1980s, so a long time ago, where mutual organisations consolidated. So there was a lot less. There's not many of us left, but the fact that government are saying they want to, they can see the benefits of mutual organisations, and they do want the sector to grow. You know, that's music to our ears. As we are proud to be a mutual organisation. So we'll have to wait and see. As I said, there's a couple of big meetings coming up. The budget statement from the Chancellor in October is a biggie, so we'll wait and see what they do. They have talked about ISA reform. We are very interested to see what that will mean. So there has been talk about potentially reducing the cash annual allowance for ISAs from 20k to potentially 4k. I mean, that's a significant drop. And what the Chancellor means there, he wants there to be more investment focus on the UK. And that's a good thing as well. And then when we've got tariffs coming from the US and all that sort of stuff, concentrating on the UK is a great thing. So we'll wait and see what happens. But it's a difficult one to predict exactly what will be said in the autumn budget.
Perfect. Kevin, Scottish Friendly, it blends its own brand product growth, partnerships, and acquisitions. So could you walk us through how each piece supports your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with own brands. So I've touched on this. So our bread and butter, I suppose, and what we're really focused on is driving our Scottish Friendly ISAs and junior ISA sales. So ISAs for adults over 18s and ISAs for children up to the age of 18. And year on year, so if you looked at 2024 sales, end of year sales, we've just recently announced a 30% increase in our own brand products. We also have an over 50s Scottish Friendly product as well, something that we might look to evolve in the future, but very much the focus is on the adult ISA and the junior ISAs, and that means that our marketing campaign activity focuses on those two products. So much so that we have a really targeted marketing plan in place. We focus on certain parts we focus on the whole of the UK, but we really hone into certain regional areas. So we focus on Scotland, as you would imagine, being Scottish based. We also focus on the northwest of the UK. And we've got a kind of a moon curve shape, which looks at honing in on some parts of the southeast and into London as well. And that's quite a new approach in terms of having a more tailored, focused marketing plan in place. And it's definitely driving increased efforts in those areas as well as other parts of the UK. So a good example of that, I suppose, is we have something called the Scottish Friendly Investor Index. That's something that I launched about 4 or 5 years ago, which looks at our own customer data. So we do research where we use a YouGov or a 3Gem, to get a 2,500 or a 5,000 UK representation across the UK. But we've got our investor index as well, and that's powerful because it's looking at a lot more. The volume of customers is a lot more that we're looking at, and that's telling us that the best. So we launch it on a quarterly basis, and it's telling us that the Northwest and Scotland are the highest growing parts of the country for us when it comes to new sales and the amount that people are able to invest. So it's great to be this size of an organisation that we can really see that the marketing activity is really working in those areas. So that's great. So that's probably own brand products. We do have a really strong focus on children's savings. Children's savings is really important to us, and we think it's something, and we can get to this later on, it's something that we really strongly believe we could be doing more to help the future generations to improve and increase financial resilience. Then we've got, you touched on the partnership and product side of things. So the product side of things is developing new products. So we've enhanced some of the products that we have. We've got what we do call a tiered pricing structure in place as well, which is basically at the highest level. The more you invest, the less your annual management charges. So if you're investing up to 5,000 at 1.5%, between 5,000 and 20,000, that will reduce to 1% AMC, and then anything over to 20,000 would be 0.5%. And other product developments as well. I mean, we're looking at other areas which I can't really divulge just now, but some exciting times coming up in terms of product development. The partnership side of things, that's where we manufacture and administer protection products, so life insurance, critical illness and income protection. If you look at the take-up of these products across the UK, is very, very low, and there's not enough people, looking really out. There was a surge when we went through pandemic, but it was kind of short-lived. So a lot of people were obviously concerned about their own health. So there was an increase in, and that's when that kind of partnership side of the business really came to a fore. And done really, really well. So the products that we manufacture and administer on behalf of pretty large companies. So we white label these products through the likes of Guardian Financial Services and Nielsen's. We've got funeral planning partners as well. So that's that part of the business in terms of products and partnerships. And then the third that you mentioned, mergers and acquisitions. So we have recently launched or merged with a company called Fidelity International, big brand's name, where we bought a big book of annuities business from them. It's £2.1 billion. So that was only announced a couple of months back, maybe not even as far as that, just before our AGM in April, so the end of March. Significant acquisition for us, the second highest in our history. The previous highest was back in 2019, when we bought a book of business from a pensions book of business from another big brand, Canada Life. And that basically doubled us in size. The Canada Life business in 2019 doubled us in size in relation to assets under management overnight. So that was significant. The reason I use the word significant as well, yes, in terms of the size of the acquisitions, but obviously the other significant was that was the time, obviously, where we were going into pandemic. So very difficult period for the business, because we had a new acquisition, a big book of business, lots of demand on the call centre, from Canada Life customers, who are you? How are you going to benefit me? What does this mean for me and my pension policy? And then obviously another side of things with going into the pandemic, that obviously had another snowball effect. So it's a pretty difficult period, but we got through it. And then obviously we decided we had to properly embed that business, big business, into the business. So embedding it took time. And that's why we haven't had another acquisition until, as I say, the Fidelity International, which again was a similar size. So I think Canada Life is 2.2 billion, Fidelity International 2.1 billion. A more sophisticated book of business, so more medium, middle to kind of higher income customers. And that's going through regulatory approval, as you would imagine, an acquisition that size. It's called a Part 7 transfer. And we're hoping that business will fully transfer over to Scottish Friendly by next summer into September next year. So it's a long approach. We have to obviously inform customers. Fidelity will inform the customers first. We have announced it into the media, but as I say, it's subject to regulatory approval. But that will be next. In terms of mergers and acquisitions going forward, we're always having conversations with other organisations. There's always conversations happening. I can't divulge who those conversations are with, whether they'll come to fruition or not. Who knows? What we would say is we wouldn't acquire a book of business just for the sake of acquiring a book of business. It would have to be the right fit for us. And there was a big tender process obviously in place, a lot of due diligence done with the most recent acquisition to make sure that it was right for, not just for Scottish Friendly, but also for Fidelity International. So that's the three-pronged growth strategy for us. The one that I mentioned earlier that has been reviewed through exec and the board and deemed definitely still the right thing for us. I think it's quite unique actually having a strategy that's been in place for such a long period of time as well, and it's quite refreshing that that is still deemed the right one for us as a business, and by that I mean for us in terms of our members that we serve.
Nice. I wanted to touch on two things. I think you mentioned about the investor index. So it seems like you're doing a lot of not reporting, but you are looking into a lot of data. Are you guys utilizing, of course, Navvai? We're linked to artificial intelligence, so it's only right that I asked this question, but are you utilizing artificial intelligence for the workflows that you're working with at the moment, front office, back office?
Yeah. I mean, I think we are. We're kind of rolling out variations of AI across the business. We're a test and learn organisation, so we're always, we're not scared to try new things. If we get it right, great. If we get it wrong, we'll revisit and relook. But yeah, we're I would say we're doing more than just dipping our toes in the water with AI. Last year, we announced a partnership with FinTech Scotland, so Financial Technology Scotland, and our commercial director is the Scottish friendly sponsor of that. So we're working closely with FinTech Scotland and of course other providers as well. So it's something we are looking at, and we'll probably definitely look to utilise more than we currently are. But it's one of those things that we're just taking our time, and there'll be more to come from that as well going forward.
And Kevin, I just wanted to ask, so regarding the M&A front, obviously you've just spoken about, all the business that's on your books now, but what kind of businesses do you actually look to bring into the fold, and how do you ensure they align with your values?
So that's part of the whole kind of tender process. So we have a number of conversations going on at any one time, and that'll be, from the way that our chief executive Stephen McGee kind of describes it, is you kind of start from chair to chair conversations, as in the chairman or the chairwoman, and then once those conversations happen, you kind of go down, not down a level, but then you'll have the chief executive to chief executive conversations, and you bring in your finance director. And then this is just something that I kind of started to find out more about very recently, actually. And then at the point where you're having really productive conversations, that's when you'll bring in your analysts and your actuaries, to do the kind of pricing of the book of business to make sure that works. So it's a lengthy process. But it has to be a lengthy process to make sure that, as I said earlier, it's going to be the right fit, not just for Scottish Friendly, but the organisation that we'd be looking to potentially build. But we're not just acquiring books of businesses willy-nilly. There's a very robust, comprehensive structure in place.
I see. And I also wanted to touch on junior ISAs as well. So we've had a little deep dive on your website, and we've seen that you got stressed the need for junior ISA reform. So why would you say it's the right time to push for this change?
Yep. So it's great that you've seen that on the website. It's really front and center of my activity with my PR and communications hat on within the team on behalf of Scottish Friendly, of course. We don't want to leave the kids behind, basically, at the highest level. When we financial resilience it's key. Our future generation is key. This is something we had conversations about. Back in everything seems to be 2019. We had conversations at the House of Lords back in 2019. We actually teamed up with a lovely chap called Lord John Lee of Trafford, based in London. So we visited him in London a couple of times, and I remember it feels like it was yesterday. One of the conversations we had the second time kind of looked into, he was, by the way, the first ISA millionaire in the UK, but his approach. So the first conversation we had was, what was your approach to saving and investing? His approach, and he's written a couple of books on this as well, was a little and often approach can soon add up. He obviously knew what he was doing to become a millionaire. He was actively managing his portfolios. He got things right. He also got things wrong, but he learned a lot around it. But it was the fact that he very much was aligned to what we believe is the right way. A little and often approach can soon add up. We talked about something that we dubbed the stepping stone approach as well. So every year, can you look, in line with maybe salary increases or so salary increase, for instance, could you afford to maybe increase your monthly contributions by 5% or 10%? Or, and the second time we met Lord John Lee, we actually started getting into the conversation around what does the future hold with junior ISAs. So we had a product before junior ISAs, which was called Child Trust Funds, as you probably remember. They were a great product because they had an incentive for mum and dad to open it. So every child in the UK got £250 through their Child Trust Fund. And Scottish Friendly were one of the companies that the government mandated to offer that product, along with other providers as well. Quite a big mandate that Scottish Friendly had. And vulnerable children, they received £500. So an example would be a child who was in a care home, for instance. Great incentive for mum and dad, not just to receive that £250 or £500. That's an incentive itself to keep going. Those products were then replaced by juniorisers, which is what we've been talking about previously. There was no government incentive there, so a bit more of a difficult sell. But we are seeing demand. We're seeing really, really strong demand, both by mum and dad, to do that. We're seeing an increase in our children's savings. In terms of going back to your point about JISA reform, yes, we've been talking about this with Lord Lee. He got so interested, and actually when his eyes really opened was when we said that it has to, the rules currently state that it has to be the parent or the legal guardian that has to open the junioriser on behalf of the child. But we know there's demand from other family members, for instance, grandparents, to do so. The reason we started getting really vocal on this was when we were in lockdown and when we knew that a lot of people were really worried about being furloughed or their future earnings. But we knew that a lot of grandparents were retired. We knew, and if you're retired, you kind of know what your weekly or monthly disposable income is going to be. And when we raised this to John Lee, he was gobsmacked that the rules were so stringent around that. So he tabled 2 questions to the House of Lords. Same question, which was, would you consider relaxing the rules to allow other family members to get involved? Those that plea, I suppose, from Lord Lee was denied on those 2 occasions, but it didn't stop us. We want to advocate for change, and we're really, really ramping things up now to the point where we're engaging with senior government officials on this very subject. So we're ramping it up. There's a couple of key meetings coming further down the line. So there's a speech at Mansion House. The Chancellor's already been talking, you've probably seen this in the media, about ISA reform in terms of ISAs in general. So whether it's a cash ISA or a stocks and shares, there's been talk about potentially reducing the cash rate from annual allowance rate, from 20,000 to 4,000. That's a significant drop. The Chancellor has just recently came out to say that she's not going to decrease the overall annual allowance. So just now you can put up to £20,000 in. She said that she's not going to reduce that limit, which is great. But she might reduce the cash version of an ISA, which was obviously benefit. And this goes back to the point, more investment into UK stocks and shares. So yeah, it's quite a bold move from Scottish Friendly, but we want to be bold because it's our future generation and helping to build financial resilience. So we're keeping at it. It's only a matter of weeks since we really started ramping things up. So there's a meeting on the 15th of July at Mansion House. Where we're looking to get children's savings, so junior ISA reform as part of the overall ISA reform. And then there's the big budget in the autumn from the Chancellor as well. So we're pushing for the rules to be relaxed. It's not going to happen overnight. But we're not knocking on the doors of, it's not just Labour, our current government. We're going to be speaking to other parties as well to help kind of drive that advocacy and the momentum and the support behind it. We've also got the Association of British Insurers on our side as well, so they're very much supportive. And obviously we're working with agencies who have that specialism in terms of public affairs, who have the contacts to open the door for us in both Holyrood and Westminster. So it's exciting, and we're going to keep beating the drum about it. And everything we do in terms of our research and our investor index that we've talked about really hones in on what we want to do for financial literacy for the future generation.
Kevin, I think we're searching for potentially a deeper meaning here. Maybe something that's a little heartfelt. But I know you guys have invested in initiatives with Action for Children, and I just wanted to ask, well, why is this type of work so important for Scottish Friendly?
Yeah, it's really important, and Action for Children is an amazing charity. I mean, they're across the UK. We focus the majority of our activity with Action for Children in kind of Scotland. And we do a number of things. I mean, we do fundraising activities with colleagues. We've seen that Scottish Friendly colleagues are really on board. I mean, we've got 350 colleagues, but but we raise a lot of money. 350 colleagues is not, it's not a big corporate that's got 40,000, 100,000 colleagues in the UK or across the world. We've got 350. When I started, we had 100. So we have grown significantly. We went from 100 6 years ago to 350, over 350. But the proportion of our colleagues who engage with Action for Children is really, really high. I mean, we have initiatives, one thing called Boycott Your Bed, which is basically sleeping outside, sleeping rough outside for the night, and really living and breathing how homeless people will feel. And we do that in October. So we're not doing this in the summer. You have a sleeping bag, and that's pretty much it. You're not allowed a tent. That's not what, a lot of homeless people will not have a tent to sleep in. So it's really sleeping out rough for the night. There's other initiatives. I mean, we've raised a lot of money doing things like that. And there's other initiatives as well that we do. So that's the fundraising, and it's really, really increased in terms of colleague engagement and colleagues wanting to get on board. We also, Action for Children, have facilities across the UK that need some degree of attention, whether it's painting fences or just building fences or just tidying up gardens. And those are kind of central hubs where vulnerable children can have a safe haven. The other thing that we do, which is fairly unique, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because this is, you used the word emotive, this is really emotive. We actually fund, for Action for Children, 2 wellbeing practitioners who go into secondary schools in areas that need it most around Glasgow. So we're focused on the Glasgow area just now. And what those 2 part-time practitioners, the reason for that is they go into schools and they speak to children who have issues, who have mental health problems, who really need it, and in those areas. And they deliver workshops with them, whether it's group workshops or some of the kids need face-to-face workshops. See, building that initial trust with children, that's the most difficult part, is the kind of open way of a two-way conversation. These wellbeing practitioners do a fantastic job. We've had them in speaking to our colleagues about what they do. And the key is really trying to help these children with coping mechanisms and the tools they need to help them. But it's not just the children. We've seen in some secondary schools that it's the families, it's the mum and dad that need a bit of support as well. So it's the full family unit in some respects as well. So that's something we're really, really proud of. We're also in the process, I can't divulge too much information on this, but we are looking at financial literacy as a potential next kind of step on a charity partner that we could potentially look at. So a bit like mergers and acquisitions, we're looking at various potential charity partners who could potentially support us in that field as well. So again, that's not going to be overnight. We need to choose the right charity that's going to fit Scottish friendly, whether that's going to remain a bit like Action for Children within Scotland, or whether we look to broaden that across the UK as well. But that's initial conversations that we're currently having with charity partners within my team and wider as well.
Kevin, your take on some of the questions that we've asked you have been spectacular. So yeah, you want to say
thank you.
Thank you. But
it was enjoyable.
We can tell that you're most certainly PR trained. But I wanted to just say, before we do wrap up, is there like do you have a message potentially for parents that are out there that are wanting to consider your particular solutions? If you were to just have a message for them, what would it be?
Yeah, I suppose back to what the conversations with Lord Lee, which was really refreshing, that even he is a millionaire. He was the first guy as a million, but his approach is similar to ours. It's a little on off. Just start where you can. Obviously, pension is a number one priority in terms of your retirement, but if you've got a little bit left at the end, try and put something away. And for long-term investing is what we would say. Long-term gives you the greater growth potential over a savings account, for instance. Obviously, we've had interest rates being high. They will start to come down, which means that savings rates will come down. Long-term investments, and for yourself, but also for to safeguard your family's financial futures, as if you can, to think about your children as well.
I gotta say, this has been a brilliant conversation. You've most certainly brought to like just how much the savings landscape is shifting, but also what's possible when industry steps up. So not just to build better products, but to to push and to reform and give back to the community. That's so a really positive message, and hopefully people do receive it very well.
Brilliant, thank you.
No worries. And for people that want to try and find Scottish Friendly, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, so our website, scottishfriendly.co.uk, has all the information there.
Good stuff. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. Co-host Darnell, thank you. And this has been another
Okay,
episode.
thanks very much.
No worries. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, cheers then. Bye-bye.